Today's video, I'm going to be revealing the new Season 4 Top 5 Best Builds in NBA 2K22 Next Gen. Before I do hop into things though, if you haven't done so already, like and subscribe. Helps me out so much, literally costs nothing and takes 5 seconds. I'm going to start things off with 2 different guard builds, and then 2 different wing builds, and finally I'll wrap things up with a center build. So starting things off with this first build, for this build, we're going to be doing the first guard build. And I'd recommend going with a point guard, but you can go with shooting guard if you want to. But in my opinion, this build is definitely best suited for the point guard position. For the height, I would recommend going with 6'2", 147, and a 6'9" wingspan. This gives you a ton of key attributes. For example, a 92 driving dunk for elite contacts, and a 92 speed with ball for Hall of Fame quick first step, amongst other things such as being fast, having good shooting, and having good defense. So moving on to the finishing attributes, first for the close shot, you're going to want this at a 62. You're going to want your driving layup at a 76 and your driving dunk at a 92. You'll have in total 22 finishing badges, which is quite good. And this build is definitely going to be able to dunk on everyone, because even though you are on the shorter side, this year 2K gives you small contact dunks. And honestly, in my opinion, the small contact dunk package is one of the most underrated things in the entire game. Next, for these shooting badges, you're going to want your mid-range at an 81 and your three-pointer at an 88, giving you 28 shooting badges. On this build, you're just not really going to be missing, and you're going to be able to green very, very consistently. The playmaking on this build is also very, very good with 32 playmaking badges, as well as I said, Hall of Fame quick first step, and additionally gold bullet passer, which is very good. And then moving on to the defense, this honestly isn't that bad. You have an 86 perimeter defense, so you're going to get gold clamps, and you also have a 90 steal for Hall of Fame interceptor. Even though this isn't the best defensive build in the game, from my experience using 6'2" builds, you're definitely able to hold your own. And then moving on to the physicals, you guys can see these are just extremely good. You have an 85 speed, a 92 acceleration, an 85 vertical for small contact dunks, and a 90 stamina. This build in total has 101 badges, which is very good, and can honestly do everything that you need a point guard build to be able to do. Playmaking and shooting, as you guys can see, is just very good. You're going to be able to hold your own on the defensive end, and your dunking is also quite good as well. If you do want free throw on this build, what I would recommend doing is drop down your close shot to a 54. If you do that, you can get a 77 free throw, which is extremely good. You're going to be able to knock down free throws consistently. And then moving on to the takeovers, as you guys can see, I'm going with double limitless takeover. I think 100% these are the best takeovers for guards, since with these, you can honestly shoot from anywhere. And then as you guys can see, I built a two-way threat, which is a very cool name and tells me I've made a build that can do everything in this game. So for the second guard build, I want to switch things up a little bit. We're still going to be a point guard, but this is going to be more of like your short meta point guard build, opposed to more of an all-around build. So for the body settings, for the height, I'm going with 5'11". For the weight, I'm going with 169 pounds. For the wingspan, I'm going with 6'6". And then the body shape, as usual, I'm going with defined. There's not really too much for me to talk about. These are just the best body settings overall. Starting things off, I'm going to be talking about the finishing attributes and badges. You have in total 17 finishing badges, which is quite good. And even though this is not a build I'd recommend just spamming rim runs on, if you do have an open lane towards the basket, definitely take it. You're going to get pro contact dunks as well as small contact dunks, so you will be able to finish out the basket at least a little bit. And then moving on to shooting, you have 31 badges as well as a 91 three-pointer. The shooting on this build is honestly just superb. And definitely, you just will not miss whatsoever. And it's pretty much the same thing for playmaking. You have 34 playmaking badges, and you honestly just can't ask for much more. And then moving on to the defense / rebounding, you have 23 defensive badges, as well as a 94 perimeter defense, a 90 steal, and a 58 block. And also on this build, you're going to get Hall of Fame clamps. Even though the defensive attributes and badges are way better on this build, I think the previous build is actually going to have better defense since you're significantly taller. And then moving on to the physicals, you have an 86 speed, a 94 acceleration, an 85 vertical, and a 91 stamina. Also, with Gym Rat or the Gatorade Joes, you're going to get a 98 acceleration, so your speed boosts are just going to be crazy. Also, the reason why on all my point guard builds I have less speed than acceleration is because speed helps you move around faster when you're off ball, which honestly does not matter for a point guard build. This build in total has 105 badges. And just like the previous build, it can do everything that you need a point guard build to be able to do. As far as which point guard build I'd recommend making, I'd make this one if you're planning on playing more rec center or pro-am, and make the previous build if you're planning on playing more park. If you do want free throw on this build, all you have to do is drop down your speed with ball 1 rating. If you do this and then upgrade free throw, you can get a 73 free throw, which is very, very good. And moving on to the takeovers, for the first and secondary takeover, I would recommend going with limitless range. Again, these are just the best takeovers for a point guard build. And as you guys can see, I built a playmaking shot creator, which makes a ton of sense as a name. So that's pretty much going to wrap it out for the ball handler builds. And now we're going to be moving on to the lockdown builds. So for the first build, we're actually going to be making a glitch build. So go ahead and make a new build and make sure your position is a shooting guard. For this glitch build, you can either be a shooting guard or a point guard. If you check out the video in the card up above, I actually made this exact same build but at the point guard position. And you guys can see for yourself which build is in your opinion better. So next, for the body settings, you need to make sure for the height, you're going with 6'3". For the weight, you're going with 220. And for the wingspan, you're going with 7 foot. And then you also need to make sure your body shape is on burly. Moving on to the attributes, pretty much upgrade this however you like to. It doesn't matter. You're not going to be making this build, but you have to do this to glitch the file. And then next, for the takeovers, also go with whatever you want to. And as you guys can see, I built a playmaking shot creator. Again, this doesn't matter. What you're going to want to do from there is scroll over to edit build, press circle repeatedly until you back out to the main menu. And then you need to change the units of measurement to the metric system. Then go back and edit the exact same build you just made. And then moving on to the body settings, you need your height to be 2.05 meters. And then max out the wingspan and also max out the weight. Now again, we're not actually going to be making this build, so just upgrade this however you would like to. And then same exact things for the takeovers, go with whatever takeovers you want to. And as you guys can see, I built a rebounding guard, which is honestly a super cool name. Let me know if you guys want me to make this build. Next thing you're going to want to do is press edit build, back out to the main menu again, and change the units of measurement back to the empirical system. Then go ahead and edit the build you just made. From there, you've pretty much glitched the file, but of course, I'll show you guys what body settings, attributes, and takeovers I would recommend going with. For this build, I'd recommend going with 6'7", 180, and 6'10" on the wingspan. And even though you're 6'7", this build's gonna have the attributes and badges of a 6'6" build. So starting things off with the finishing badges and attributes, as you guys can see, the main and most important thing is that we have a 92 driving dunk. This way we can get elite contacts. And then moving on to the shooting, this is quite good. You're really just not going to be missing if you're open. For the playmaking, this isn't on like the point guard level. You should really never be the primary ball handler, but you do have at least some playmaking. And then moving on to the defensive / rebounding attributes and badges, you guys can see I have 25 badges, as well as Hall of Fame claims, Hall of Fame interceptor, and decent block and rebounding rating. And then moving on to the physicals, these are of course very good. Not really much for you guys to see here. This build in total has 89 badges, and it's able to do pretty much everything and has superb defense. If you do want free throw on this build, what I recommend doing is dropping down your offensive rebound to a 70. You can then get a 71 free throw, which is quite good. Moving on to the takeovers, for the first takeover, I would recommend going with extreme clamps. And then for the secondary takeover, I'm going with spot of precision. These are overall the best takeovers. You really are a two-way shark. And then as you guys can see, I built a two-way 3-point shot creator, which is honestly such a cool name in my opinion. Also, if you guys want to see a gameplay video with this pretty much exact build, then check out the video in the description. So for the next lockdown build, for this build, you're going to want to go with small forward, but it can run the power forward position if you wanted to. For the body settings, first for the height, I would recommend going with 6'8". For the weight, I'd recommend going with 188. And for the wingspan, I'd recommend going with 7'4". These are all around the best body settings. You're able to get an 80 ball handling for that next tier of dribble moves, as well as a 91 defensive rebound for gold rebound chaser. Starting things off with the finishing, as you guys can see, this is very, very good. Sadly, you don't have standing dunk on this build, but I really don't think that's that important on a 6'8" build. But you have 21 finishing badges as well as elite contact dunks. For the shooting, you have an 83 pointer as well as 24 shooting badges. If you know your jump shot at least somewhat well, you're going to be able to shoot very consistently. And then moving on to the playmaking, you guys can see this is very good. You're going to be able to facilitate very well. And also your movement's going to be very good if you know what you're doing. And then moving on to the defensive / rebounding badges and attributes, you have in total 29 defensive badges. And you guys can see your defense is just very good all around. It's not going to be the ideal build for a really short meta point guard, but definitely its defense is going to be very good. And then moving on to the physicals, again, there's not really much to see here. They're all around just very, very good. This build in total has 97 badges, which is very good. It's all around just able to do everything in this game. The only thing that I would change is I wish I did have at least a little bit of standing dunk on this build, but it's overall just very difficult to upgrade. If you do want free throw on this build, what I'd recommend you do is drop down your close shot to a 73. You can get a pretty decent free throw, and if you want something even higher, you can drop down your stamina a little bit. So now, moving on to the takeovers, you're unable to get sharpshooting takeover. So for the first takeover, I decided to go with ankle breaking shots. There's something so satisfying about dropping people on a 6'8" build. And then for the secondary takeover, I went with extreme clamps. I do see this as kind of a lockdown build. And then as you guys can see, I built a two-way slashing shot creator. Now moving on to the final build of this video. So for the final build of this video, we are going to be making the center build. For the body settings, I recommend going with 7'2", 229 pounds, and a 7'11" wingspan. Starting things off with the finishing attributes and badges, you guys can see these are just insane. You'll have in total 27 badges. This really isn't as much of a post scorer build, but you're definitely going to be getting a ton of standing contact dunks. Moving on to shooting, you have 21 shooting badges, and even though you have a relatively low 3-point rating, as long as you know your jump shot and you're able to time it correctly, you're going to be able to shoot. You're not really going to be getting bailed out by that many whites, but as long as you know your jump shot, you're going to be chilling. And then moving on to playmaking, the only thing you need is pass accuracy. We have this at an 85, we'll get 15 playmaking badges, as well as Hall of Fame break starter and gold bullet passer. And then moving on to defensive / rebounding, again, these are just insane. You're going to get Hall of Fame brick wall, Hall of Fame intimidator, Hall of Fame rim protector, and as well gold rebound chaser. And overall, you're just going to be getting so many blocks and so many rebounds. And then moving on to the physicals, again, these are just very, very good. If you do want free throw on this build, what I'd recommend doing is first, drop down your stamina to a 90, drop down your post control to a 70. You can then get a 59 free throw. And if you want something higher, you can drop down your acceleration a little bit to get a 66 free throw. And then moving on to the takeovers, for the first takeover, I'd recommend going with See the Future, and second, I'd recommend going with Stuffed Blocks. You can flip these if you want to, but these are definitely the best big man takeovers. And as you guys can see, I built a two-way facilitator, which I guess kind of makes sense as a name. Thank you guys so much for sticking around until the end of the video. If you did enjoy it, like and subscribe. This is a dribble tutorial as well as the best dribble moves on the screen right now. Go follow me on Twitter, and I'm out. Peace.